So we finally got down to Cactus Room and played our long awaited gig, and it was pretty good. The plan is to have a discussion video, maybe with a couple of other band members in the near future. But this video, I just want to talk about what goes into making a gig like this happen. I long for the days where we just turned up to a gig and our biggest concern was having to carry around massive, like 25 kilo guitar amps. There is so much that goes into a Black Dime Cabaret gig these days, from the massive amount of sound equipment to now lighting, setting up cameras, and, you know, how every venue is different, and planning for things that we cannot possibly know in advance unless we, go there and map them all out. As a very small team, we don't get the luxury of having such things as roadies and assistants. First of all, I want to give a big thank you to everybody who came out to support us at Cactus Room last Saturday afternoon. I don't think we hit the 60 that we were hoping for, but we still managed to get a lot of people there, and it was a fantastic evening of music. Arc of Sun were fantastic. Tina Growls I absolutely loved. Great vibes, a really nice venue, and a very special thank you actually to Buffy, our sound engineer. We've struggled with getting a good sound at our live shows in the past. Like, it's been quite a big issue for us. Our music, it's so important to be able to hear what we're saying and like make sense of our words, and half the time you cannot understand anything. It's loud. Number of factors could have contributed to why it sounded so good at Cactus, whether it's the venue, or maybe Joel is finally starting to hit those drums a bit quieter for us, or maybe it just was, the power of a good sound engineer who knows what they're doing. So Buffy, thank you very much for the lovely sound that you gave the audience on Saturday. Gigs are... Sometimes I wonder if gigs are worth the amount of stress that they induce. When you look at the fun to stressful ratio, it is definitely leading more towards stress. And I know we put all that stress on ourselves because we don't have to go to the extent that we go to in order to try to make like a full-on show, especially at the level that we're at, with the amount of people coming to our gigs, and like profits are very small. We've at least broken even at Cactus, but I can't imagine that we'll be receiving the amount of money that we put in to the show, not just financially but time-wise. Just turning up to a gig with your gear and playing a show, I think that's totally fine. And actually back when we used to do that, mostly in the old Black Dime Cabaret days, I wasn't stressed at all about gigs, and actually I enjoyed them a lot more, probably. We have so much stuff going on at our shows that's not just the performance. The first of those things that we upgraded probably a few months ago, maybe even... I have no idea what time is these days. The first thing we upgraded was our sound setup. And this is one thing that I will never go back to the old way. Playing music is loud, and being on a stage is very loud. And I used to, after every gig, after every rehearsal, my ears would be ringing. Obviously you can wear ear plugs, but then it's like you can't hear anything. And I think that's one of the things that we found as well, because I think we played a couple of gigs where before we had this full-on setup where we would just have earplugs in, and I would like literally not be able to hear my own guitar. So the option was hear everything but be deaf, or hear nothing and protect your ears. However, special thanks to Caitlin, our singer. Her grandparents kindly gave us some financial assistance in coming up with our own live rack that we take to all of our gigs. We use it to run our shows, we run backing tracks, we run all of our instruments into it. We have splitters so that the front of house engineer gets their own feed as well. So our mix and the front of house mixes are completely separate, which gives everyone the control that they need. It allows us to use a click. It does allow us now to program entire shows with MIDI and get our lighting and all that stuff going. The beating heart of a Black Dime Cabaret show is our live rack and the laptop that's running the session. The system goes like this. So, for example, our microphone plugs into a Behringer X32 Rack. These things are very, very good, very versatile. You can do everything with them. You can record into them. You can do... It's portable. And then through this, we're able to create different mixes for everybody. Everybody's got their own in-ear transmitter thing. I've got a wireless one. The others are all wired. That is one thing that we would love to upgrade down the line, is to get everyone wireless, just to get rid of some of those wires and, I don't know, take like 5 minutes of setup off, you know. I'll go into later how important it is to streamline and honestly just rehearse the setup and pack up process. But yeah, so everyone gets their own mix, which means we can hear exactly what we want to hear. I usually always have my click like super high, my guitar super high, and my vocals super high. We don't have any drums coming in because they're loud enough already. Sometimes I turn up the bass because there are some key bass moments that I like to listen to. And Caitlin's voice as well, reasonably loud. It lets us hear things with such high detail and protects our ears while doing it. Lets us all be hooked up to the click. Lets us use backing tracks. Gives us maximum flexibility to do everything. I don't get as stressed about this anymore. Like, we've got a pretty good process for it. The only stressful thing, obviously, with the more gear that you bring to a gig, the more gear stress there is, which is my number one source of stress. Gear stress is just the stress that I feel about forgetting something, like the horror that comes with halfway through driving somewhere or getting somewhere, and then you're like, oh crap, I forgot the Focusrite that we use for all the click and the backing tracks, which has happened before. Even if so we have an Xbox controller that we use so Joel can just click when to activate the next song, switch between songs. If you forget that, like, that's like such an easy thing to forget. And it's like, once you don't have the controller, now you better have like the laptop like super close and fiddle with all the things. Like, it's just, the more things you have, the more stressful it is. So that's why I get massive gear stress before every gig, even before rehearsals, because like, yeah, just don't want to forget something. Our entire show is run off a Studio One session. So I know a lot of people like to use Ableton because it's, I don't know, maybe it's better. But since I already pay for Studio One, I use it for my recording, and I don't know, Studio One's got some pretty good features in it, so maybe Ableton would be better, but that's just another thing to pay for, really. And another good thing about Studio One, if I use it for live, is that it's very easy to just like grab stuff from like a mixing session, drop it into Studio One, our live session. So it all integrates very nicely together. Another good thing is, I mean, like most DAWs have this, just the fact that it's on Windows and Mac. If I was to use Logic Pro, for example, then I would only be able to access the session on my Mac. If I wanted to do something that required more screen space, or if I didn't have my laptop with me, I can use my Windows computer. So I find Studio One's just really good for us, and so far, no real issues at all with that kind of stuff. So in the session, we've got, and maybe I can do a video where I actually describe this in more detail and you can see it. But in the session, we've basically got each song divided up into, each song has all the stems. So here's the trumpets, here's like the piano, and then I've just got a click track. And we've got all of the instrumentals running to the right, I think, and all the clicks running to the left, or it might be the other way around. Having a mono backing track is just easier because it's one less fader that you have to touch, one less connection, and for these small venues, we don't need stereo. When we're sending these to the front of house, we only send the backing tracks. So there's no way that the engineer can accidentally have the click turned on or anything crazy like that. If there was one gig where unfortunately everybody present did get a dose of metronome blasting out of the speakers, but that was not the engineer's fault, that was my fault, because there was one song where I had like a stereo click track, so it was coming through both. Good learning experience. Every time something goes wrong, it's just I know that it will never go wrong again, because that's always going to be playing in my head. So that's our session. So far, so good. Haven't had any crashes, thank God. Haven't accidentally deleted anything or lost it. So, thank you, Studio One, for allowing us to run a smooth show.